YouTube, in this video, I'm going to be ranking every Western Conference projected starting five for the upcoming 2025 NBA season. This will be part one of a four-part series on the channel, where part one will be obviously this video, ranking every Western Conference starting five. Part two will be ranking every Eastern Conference starting five. And then part three and part four will be ranking every NBA Western Conference team's bench from worst to best, and then every Eastern Conference team's bench worst to best. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see these other videos. Now, a couple things to note before we get into the rankings. Some of these lineups, and actually most of these lineups, I believe, are unconfirmed to be, the actual like starting five for game one. So like some of this stuff is just me researching what a lot of people are saying in the local medias of the respective teams of like what the starting lineup's going to be. So there could be a couple changes here and there for game one that, you just can't predict. So this is projected starting lineups. The second thing is like my criteria for the ranking worst to best will be not just like how good the players are in the starting five, because that is a big part of it, but also how well they complement each other, right? A lot of it comes down to fit. And so it's not just about like, the best five players. A lot of times it's just about like how they fit together. So that's a big part of the criteria. I'm going to be considering things like defensive fit, strengths and weaknesses that these guys will be able to balance each other with and stuff like that. So without further ado, all that out of the way, let's get into the 2025 worst to best rankings for the Western Conference starting lineups. Let's go, folks. And also really quick, obviously we know that the Western Conference this season is so stacked. And so, there is a very little margin between a lot of these teams, so there's going to be some teams like ranked in the lower half of the top 10 that are like super high upside playoff teams. And just because the starting lineup isn't ranked like super high doesn't mean that the team won't be really good, because at the end of the day, starting five is only kind of just half the issue, right? You got to have a really deep bench, and some of these teams like strengths are their bench. And so like just because like a team will be, let's say, ranked 8th or 9th in the starting five category, for this four-part series does not mean that I think they're the 8th or 9th best team. It just means that the starting five is the 8th or 9th, whatever it is. So hopefully you guys can take that into consideration. Let's get into the rankings. So at number 15, I will have the Portland Trailblazers, and the projected lineup for the Trailblazers is going to be Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. And there's a lot of talent in that starting five. It's just, quite frankly, when you look at the other teams in the West, it's just not good enough to be ranked anywhere else, and so I actually think there's a lot of versatility in that starting five, and depending on how Scoot Henderson, plays this season, this could be a little bit of a boost for them in terms of the rankings. You could maybe make a case that the 14th team should be ranked 15th. I don't know. I just think the Portland Trailblazers, top end talent on this starting five is not as good as some of these other teams. And while I do think these guys complement each other well, like for instance, the Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant front court pairing is super interesting to me, and I think on both ends of the floor, it's going to be very versatile and dynamic. DeAndre Ayton is a good player. He's a good center. Anthony Simons is one of the more underrated offensive guards in the league. But again, to me, just the top end talent just isn't there to rank them, any higher on this list. And so I will have the Blazers coming in at number 15. Coming in at number 14, I have the Utah Jazz. Again, you could make a case. I could totally hear a case that the Jazz should be ranked 15th, but I will say they have one advantage in this starting lineup over the Blazers, and that is just that they have Larry Markkinen, who is a far better player than the Blazers have on their whole team. And so he just kind of raises the floor of this lineup for me in a lot of ways. Larry Markkinen is an all-star caliber player. The weird thing about this starting lineup is I looked all over the internet and I found like one consistent lineup that most of these media sources had that the Jazz would be, putting on the floor this season. And I actually don't know that that's going to be their lineup, because it's kind of weird. Here's the lineup I'm seeing all over the internet. This very well could not be their lineup, because I just don't know that it makes sense to me. But, what the internet has is basically Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Larry Markkinen, Taylor Hendricks, and John Collins at the five. It just feels like really weird that they would put John Collins at the five. I don't know that that's going to be their lineup. I would predict something like Keontae George, Colin Sexton, maybe Cody Williams, Larry Markkinen, and Walker Kessler. I think that could be more of a, for one, just a better lineup in general. But, secondly, that just makes more sense of who they would start. Let me know down in the comment section, Jazz fans or not, is the first lineup I read going to be their lineup? Either way you slice it, I do think this is the 14th best lineup, no question for me. Like, no matter who they put on the floor, they just don't have the consistency across the board from every position that you would need to rank them higher. So the Jazz come in at number 14, although I do like a lot of the young talent on the Jazz. They are young, and they are going to be like doing a tanking through playing young players kind of thing. And so in the West, this just doesn't cut it as far as teams above them. So I will have them at 14, no matter what lineup they put on the floor for me personally. For the 13th best lineup, this is going to rub some people the wrong way, and I'm totally cool with that, because I really thought thought about this a lot, and I'm pretty confident with my selection, but, you know, at 13, I'm going to have the Golden State Warriors. Again, this does not mean I think the Warriors are the 13th best team in the Western Conference, not by any stretch. I actually think the Warriors are going to be a play-in team this season. They're so deep and loaded, but the problem is for me on this ranking in particular, their starting lineup is not the strength of this team. The strength of this team is, for one, Steph Curry, but two, the depth and the bench. I mean, this team is really deep at every position with talented players. And so, like, just the starting five is one of the bottom tier, you know, starting fives in the West, but I do think they will be a play-in team. I would expect the starting five to look something like Steph Curry, DeAnthony Melton. To be fair, the two guard could be DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, or Brandon Podziemski. I could see any of those guys starting at the two, but in my opinion, it would be Steph Curry, DeAnthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and Draymond Green at the five. This is a really good lineup. It is a play-in caliber lineup. The problem is it's just not the strength of this team. You know, you have one of the top 10 players in the world in Steph Curry. I just don't love Draymond at the five. I'm going to be honest with you guys, especially in this Western Conference where a lot of teams have super dominant centers. But either way, I just think, you know, the starting five does not reflect how good this team's going to be. And so I have them at 13th. Just please keep an open mind throughout this video. You know, there's going to be some people that don't like this selection here at 13. I totally understand that. But again, I think the Warriors are a play-in team. I just think their starting five is 13. Coming in at the 12th overall starting five in the Western Conference, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. I know you're going to say, D-Have, wow, the Clippers over the Warriors. That's crazy. Again, this is just starting fives, and the Clippers are going to put a very good and versatile defensive starting five on the floor with plenty of offense as well. I expect the starting five to be James Harden, Terrence Mann, Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard, and Ibaka Zubac. That is, of course, assuming Kawhi Leonard will be healthy to start the season. If that is the lineup, I mean, that lineup is super well balanced offensively and defensively. You have a lot of athleticism. You have plenty of size, and that is a really big lineup. Maybe you could use a little bit more shot creation or, you know, gravity from the outside and floor spacing, but at the end of the day, that lineup is super big, super versatile on both ends. And I just think they're good enough offensively to kind of, you know, counteract some of those issues, and defensively, they're going to be really good. From 2 through 4, you have some shutdown guys, including, you know, Derrick Jones Jr., who bring in from Dallas, Terrence Mann, you know, Kawhi Leonard. These guys are great defenders, and so I just have them, you know, wing defense is super important these days, especially in the Western Conference, and I have them at the 12th overall selection. A lot of people will not like that one, I promise you. At the number 11 selection, I have the San Antonio Spurs, and I actually don't think the Spurs are going to be as good as a lot of people are saying this season, but I do think their starting lineup is super, super competent from all levels. Like, I could be totally wrong about the Spurs this year. I just think when you look at all the teams in the West, like, they're just kind of a fringe play-in team to me. A lot of people seem to think they could even be a playoff team. I just don't know about that, man. We got to see some, you know, better results from these guys, and we got to see it on the floor first. You know, I'm open to being wrong about that, but the Spurs lineup, in my opinion, will be Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, and Victor Wembanyama. That is a great starting five in the West or the East. Once we get from like 9 to 1, these lineups are wild. But when you think about Victor Wembanyama's progress and the jump that he's going to take this season, it is no question that he makes this lineup have such a high floor. And then Chris Paul, I just think, is a fantastic addition to this team. He's going to make this offense run a lot more consistently and smooth. Devin Vassell is another guy I think that's going to take a leap in, you know, his production. He's a great shot creator already in his career. And then, you know, Sohan and Barnes, I like them in the front court. There's a lot of kind of unique skill sets in this lineup, and it is a very versatile lineup on either end of the floor. And so I have them 11th, but again, they could be a lot higher if everything goes well for this lineup. And so, you know, just keep that in mind. You know, the range for the Spurs lineup is anywhere for me from 11 to like 7, but we just have to see it on the floor. Coming in at number 10 on the Western Conference starting five rankings, I have the Houston Rockets. And while the Houston Rockets might not necessarily have the pop of some of these other teams, like the star power, this team is so deep and versatile, and I love the fit that they have with each other and the chemistry they've already built. You know, this is basically the same starting lineup it's going to be as last year, and I would predict it to be Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. This is a fantastic defensive lineup. This is a lineup with a lot of toughness. There's plenty of playmaking to go around in this lineup offensively. I like the floor spacing as well, and I think Sengun and Jalen Green are going to take leaps in their game this season, and so I'm kind of projecting that into the ranking here. I like the lineup on both ends. I think they have a lot of versatility defensively, and we've already seen Alperen Sengun improve as a defender. Jabari Smith is one of the more underrated defenders in the league, in my opinion. There's a very nice blend between athleticism, raw talent, and like veteran leadership and toughness. I just love the contrast and balance of this lineup. It makes it so easy to predict them, you know, higher than some of these other teams, in my opinion. There's just so much to like about this lineup for Houston at number 10 for me, and this is kind of where where the rankings will take a little bit of a separation gap between everyone from 15 to 10 that I've already laid out, and then 9 to 1. Like, this is kind of a gap in my opinion. And at number 9, this is another team I don't think is going to be the 9th ranked team. I just think they have the 9th ranked starting 5 when looking at everyone else. Still a great starting 5 though, a playoff caliber starting 5, and I have the Sacramento Kings. I would predict this lineup to be De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. There's so much firepower in this lineup. You have Huerter and Keegan Murray as your dynamic shooters to provide a lot of space around guys like DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis. You also have a lot of shot creation from De'Aaron Fox. You have transition scoring from De'Aaron Fox. You also have exceptional playmaking throughout the lineup. Offensively, this could be one of the top lineups in the league, like top 5 even. It really could be for me personally. Defensively, I just don't love it. The perimeter is going to be a little bit shaky in my opinion. The best defender in this lineup might be Keegan Murray. I know he's taken leaps in his defense. I just don't love the lineup defensively, but this lineup is going to outscore a lot of teams, no question about it. They're certainly playoff caliber. I love the versatility on that end of the floor, but I just think defensively they lack a little bit of athleticism and consistency. So I have them at the number 9 ranking, but that is not to say they're not great, because again, I think this is a playoff team. I actually ranked them number 6 in the Western Conference in my playoff predictions video. So either way you look at it, I mean, this lineup is really good. I just think when you look at the other teams in the West, they're a little bit more dynamic defensively. Coming in at number 8 in these rankings, I have a team that I also have in the playoffs, but again, I just think this team's strength, similar to the Warriors, how I talked about before, this team's strength is in their depth at certain positions and their versatility across the entire 12-man roster. There is a glaring hole in this team, and I'm talking of course about the New Orleans Pelicans. Again, another team I have in the playoffs, the 5th seed in my playoff prediction video. I would predict the Pelicans lineup to be CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Yves Missi. Now, there have been some people saying that Zion could play the 5 instead of the rookie Yves Missi, which would make this lineup a lot different, and I honestly don't know how I'd feel about that, but there are also people saying CJ McCollum might come off the bench. I don't know if that's true. Again, this is the common sense lineup for me. In this case, you'd have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy coming off the bench, which is crazy to even say. Of course, we'll get into all that in part 3 of this 4-part series. I'll be ranking every team's bench, but hey, listen, the Pelicans have a center issue, all right? And I like Yves Missi as a prospect. I think he's going to be a good defensive center in this league, and I think he makes a lot of progress towards that this season in his rookie year. But when you're competing for a championship, or at least you're hoping to, having a rookie at center is not ideal, okay? And I don't care what, rookie center it is. I don't care if it's Wemby. I don't care who it is. It's just not something that generally has worked throughout NBA history. You got to have a reliable point guard and a reliable center in most cases for, the top end teams. Another thing that I'm not so sold on about this lineup is, just the defense in general. When you leave Herb Jones on the bench, and your starting point guard is CJ McCollum, who's, not known for his defense, you're starting a, rookie center has the potential to be a great defender, but is a rookie center. You're just leaving a lot of room for error on the defensive end of the floor. I like Brandon Ingram's defense. I think Zion Williamson will take a defensive leap this season, and I do think DeJounte Murray still has some really good defense left in him after his Hawks days where maybe he was a little bit worse defensively than we thought. But at the end of the day, I just am not sold on this starting 5 being like a top 5 starting 5 in the West. I do love them offensively. I mean, this is one of the better starting 5s offensively in the league. Think about the 1 through 3 shot creation with CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Brandon Ingram. You're going to be able to get shots off, and good shots off, basically in any situation. I mean, the playmaking ability that is just so rare in this league. This is the best 1 through 3 playmakers I've maybe seen in the league this season. There's going to be a lot of open shots on this team, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Zion Williamson to attack and for those other guys to space the floor. I just love this lineup's versatility. They have good size as well, but again, just a rookie center, as good as he might be defensive, I'm not sold on it, and so I love the Pelicans. I think they're going to be one of the league's best teams this season. I've talked about how Zion Williamson losing weight is going to be big for his growth as a player. It's going to allow him to have more opportunities to stay healthy and maybe even take a defensive leap, but I just think there's a lot of ifs in this entire thing. And so I love the Pelicans as a whole. Again, having Herb Jones and Trey Murphy the third potentially coming off the bench is absolutely insane. I like some of these other guys like Jordan Hawkins. I just think overall when I'm ranking these other lineups, I just think they have a little bit less question marks. And so again, I don't think the Pelicans are 8th best. I don't even think they're anywhere close to that. I have them as the 5th seed in the West this season, but I just think this lineup is a little bit subpar to the people above them. Now, coming in at number 7, this is another team with some similar logic that I use for the Pelicans could be applied to this team, right? And that is the Memphis Grizzlies, a rookie center that is unproven in the league. People are questioning a lot of things about Zach Edey. I do think he's gonna have a long, prosperous career in the NBA. This is kind of a prospect that's super hit or miss. Like, I think a lot of people either think that he's going to be like terrible and he can't play in the NBA as like a starter, you know what I mean? Or he's going to be like an elite, top of the league big man. I personally fall somewhere in the middle. I actually think Zach Edey is going to be just fine on both ends and he'll figure it out. He's a super talented guy. But at the end of the day, this just comes down to the Grizzlies having a very versatile lineup. I mean, on both ends of the floor. When you look at this lineup, it's probably going to be Ja Morant, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Triple J, and then Zach Edey. I think that is a fantastic lineup on both ends of the floor. You have two DPOYs on defense. You have Jaren Jackson and Marcus Smart. Those guys are going to be so versatile and they're going to be able to expend so much energy on that end of the floor when you have Ja Morant and Desmond Bane on offense doing a lot of the lifting. So I think the weakness of this lineup obviously would be, you could potentially say, the floor spacing. They don't have in the backcourt, either one of those guys are, great shooters. They're fine and they're serviceable, I guess. Ja Morant and Marcus Smart, of course. They're not necessarily known as floor spacers, I'd say. Desmond Bane is an elite three-point shooter. Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of the best power forward three-point shooters. Zach Edey is not, projected to be taking threes. He could, I don't know. So the floor spacing could be a concern, but there's just so much offensive, firepower from this starting lineup. There's a lot of defensive versatility. And I think the playmaking will be mostly done by Ja Morant, who is exceptional at that. He really excels in that regard. A very underrated playmaker. And while they do have a rookie center, just like the Pelicans, you could say Zach Edey could make or break this starting lineup, which totally could happen. I think he could be the X factor of it, but I think it's a lot more versatile defensively than the Pelicans. And again, neither of these teams are just defined by their, starting five. I actually think both of these teams are very deep at a lot of positions. The main thing is just the defensive versatility for the Grizzlies. And honestly, Ja Morant, he's going to be back. He's going to have a lot to prove. So it's a very thin margin, to be quite honest with you, with the Grizzlies and the Pelicans. But at the end of the day, I did give the Grizzlies a slight edge. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. Like between 6 and 5, there's again very little separation for me. But between 5 and the 4 through 1 teams, there is a big separation. And so for the 6th ranked team in the Western Conference starting fives, I'm going to have the Phoenix Suns. And people might take issue with this because when you look at the Suns starting five on paper, there is maybe the most offensive firepower of any offense in the entire league. That goes for the East as well. Offensively, this is going to be a top 5 offensive lineup in the league, like across the board for me. And people are going to have a lot of issues with who I have above them, but just try to keep an open mind if you're a Suns fan. Having the 6th best starting lineup is obviously an accomplishment in this Western Conference, as we've already described how many great teams there are. So the starting lineup for the Suns is actually confirmed to be Tyus Jones, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Yusuf Nurkic. I'm going to be honest, this, again, offensively, this is a top 5 offensive lineup for me in the entire league, maybe top 3 even. You have everything that you need. You have the floor spacing, the shot creation, the playmaking is there now with Tyus Jones. The turnovers are going to be way less of an issue with Tyus Jones running this offense. Obviously, this is going to be just open shot heaven. You're going to get so many great shots in this lineup. There's so much versatility across the board. However, defensively, I think this lineup could struggle, like a lot. The backcourt is a little bit small. When you consider how Bradley Beal and Tyus Jones, they're a little bit small, in my opinion, and neither of those guys are great defenders. Devin Booker and KD are the defensive strengths of this lineup. Nurkic is okay in the post as a defender, in my opinion, and he's a great rebounder. But I just think, in general, this lineup lacks a lot of versatility defensively. Now, that's not to say they can't be about average as far as the league goes. They definitely proved me wrong last season defensively. I thought the Suns would be maybe a bottom defense in the league. Actually turned out numbers-wise, they were slightly above average, but a lot of that had to do with Royce O'Neal being in the lineup. I don't know. This lineup defensively for me is not great. It could be okay. It's just not great. Offensively, again, top 5 offense in the league, no question as far as lineups go, but I just don't know. And I've said this a lot. I think Bradley Beal would be very well suited to come off of the bench for this team and be the 6th man of the year for the NBA. I mean, he would be easily the best 6th man. It doesn't even have to be a situation where, he's playing less than 30 minutes a game as a 6th man. Like, he could still play the same amount of minutes. He just have to be in different lineups to better complement the team and use his skill set more effectively. I just think when you have KD, Beal, and Booker all in the same lineup, it's a little bit redundant and it's a little bit counterproductive. I would rather stagger some of those guys' minutes a lot more, and particularly Bradley Beal. I'd love him to lead the second unit and have Grayson Allen in the lineup with Devin Booker, KD, and Tyus Jones, because, he is an elite 3-point shooter in this league off the catch. He led the league in 3-point shooting last season. I don't even think he's a liability in any other phase of the game. There's only one basketball when KD, D-Book, and Bradley Beal are on the floor. So one of those guys is just going to have to relegate to a lot of catch and shoots. And to me, that is grossly mismanaging Bradley Beal as a player to relegate him to catch and shoots. You could say it's disrespectful for someone like Bradley Beal to come off the bench, but at the end of the day, it's more respectful to say that and have him lead the second unit and be the guy in the second unit and have him just take a lot of catch and shoots and attacking closeouts and driving kicks. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Either way, I'd still probably have the Suns 6. I think I would move them up to 5 if Grayson Allen would take Bradley Beal's place and Bradley Beal would come off the bench. It just makes the most sense to me, but the Suns are in for a good season either way, and 6 is a good spot for them in my opinion. Now, coming in at number 5, a lot of people are going to have issues with this. I have the Los Angeles Lakers. What the Lakers have slightly over the Suns is a defensive front court. You know, they have a DPOY candidate in Anthony Davis. They have LeBron James, who's capable of good transition and help defense. They have a lot more size in the front court and versatility offensively as well. You know, the starting lineup of the Lakers is going to be D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron, and AD. That is the lineup that has been confirmed by JJ Redick. You know, I think the backcourt is not particularly great defensively. I think that could be an issue. Perimeter defense would be the weakness of this starting 5 for me personally. However, in the front court, I do think the size is super important. The athleticism, the help defense from LeBron, and just the problem solving of a lot of these issues from AD. He's just such a special defender that he just really makes a lot of these problems not as magnified as they would be with someone else at center. Offensively, I think this is one of the more versatile and complementary offenses starting 5s in the league. I mean, you have 2 top 10 players on your team. You know, you could maybe say AD's like anywhere from 13 or 12 to like 10 or 9, but at the end of the day, he's in that range. LeBron's a top 10 player. You have great spacing in this lineup all across the board. You know, I think JJ Redick's going to make a big impact on this offense to where AD is going to be a lot more involved in the offense as a offensive hub, which I think is a great decision. That will greatly elevate this team's offensive output. As far as the playmaking, it is solid across the board. You have really good catch and shoot guys in Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. As I mentioned, D'Lo and LeBron particularly, very exceptional playmakers, right? And so there's so much offensive pop in this lineup, and defensively, I think they're going to be in the front court just good enough to make up for the lack of perimeter, defense. I just think they complement each other so well. This is a very well balanced lineup. This is a lineup of a few guys that have specific roles that won't try to do too much. In like Rui and AR, you can expect any given night a explosion offensively from D'Lo, and obviously having 2 of the top 10 or so best players in the league in LeBron and AD is going to elevate the floor of this lineup so much. But I just love the complementary balance that they have, and so I rank them 5. I don't think they're going to be the 5th best team in the West. I'm going to be honest with you. I think they're going to be a play-in team somewhere around 9 in the Western Conference this season. Maybe the 9th seed. Anywhere, I would say the Lakers could be anywhere from 10 to like 6. I do not think they're going to be 5th, but the starting lineup is exceptional. That is the strength of this team, in my opinion. They certainly fit exceptionally well together, and so I just give them the slight edge over Phoenix. But now there's a big gap between 5 and 4, and in my opinion, between 4 and 1, there is a small gap between each team that I have ranked. It's like kind of just a different tier of team. These 4 teams everyone knows are basically like a lock for the top 4 seeds, barring anything crazy, injuries or anything. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But these are the top 4 in the West, no question. And the starting lineups are going to reflect that. So let's get into the top 4. The final 4, folks. Let's do it. Obviously, I'm recording this video post Karl Anthony Towns trade. I have the Minnesota Timberwolves at the 4th overall selection and the 4th best starting 5 in the Western Conference for the 2025 season. I could hear a case that the Wolves are 3rd. I just think the Wolves, after the Karl Anthony Towns trade, they lose a little bit of credibility in the starting 5 department, but they gain so much credibility in the depth department. This is now one of the deepest teams in the West. Crazy to say, because the Wolves last season, one of their issues, in my opinion, was the depth. Having certain skill sets off the bench in the playoffs, was an issue for this team. They just had a limited range of skill sets. Hey, they are loaded at every position now, and you can't say that anymore. But for the starting 5, I do think it's a little bit less steady, in my opinion. Does not reflect how the Wolves will be this season. Just the starting 5, as I mentioned 100 times throughout this video. The starting 5 for the Wolves will be, once this player is healthy, this 100% will be it. It'll be Mike Conley at the 1, Ant-Man at the 2, J-Mac, Jaden McDaniels at the 3. Once Julius Randle is healthy, it'll be Julius Randle at the 4, and obviously Rudy Gobert at the 5. Now, again, the strength of this team now, in my opinion, is having such a big range of skill sets off the bench. This is one of the deepest teams. Starting 5 is still elite, though, no question. I mean, you have very good defensive versatility. You have a lot more playmaking now, assuming Randle will be in the starting lineup at some point early in the season. For now, it'll be Naz Reid, but I could say the same thing. They'll still be ranked 4th, in my opinion. Naz Reid will be a great power forward starter in Randle's absence if he is out for a portion of the regular season. But with Randle, this team has a lot more playmaking than they did. They have a lot more offensive creation. Mike Conley is a great facilitator. He's a great table setter for this offense. AE is going to have these offensive explosions where he's just going to take over games at times. Defensively, this is maybe the best defensive lineup in the league. I wonder how the fit defensively with Randle is going to be. I do think Cat is a better defender than Randle, but Anthony Edwards, really good perimeter defender, actually pretty great considering performing when he's locked in on that end. He is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, in my opinion. That's pretty crazy to say, but I truly believe that. Mike Conley can hold his own. J-Mac is an all-NBA caliber guy from the perimeter, so versatile, so switchable, and then Rudy Gobert, DPOY. So defensively, this team is locked and loaded in the starting five. Offensively, I think they have, just enough shooting to get by. Not the best floor spacing, but, it is solid, in my opinion, can work. I do think the bench is where the shooting really lies on this team, so it's kind of hard to rank the starting five, but either way, I think, this is a team starting five-wise without a lot of weaknesses, and their strengths are so good that they have to be in the top four. It's just that the teams above them, I just think, are a little bit more dangerous offensively while still providing a lot of great defense, and so it's maybe just a little bit more versatile overall. I don't know. I think if Cat were still on this team and in the starting five, I'd maybe have them third or second even. We'll have to see, but personally, I think, again, the strength of this team is the entire unit, not just the starting five, but four is a great spot for the Wolves. I actually have them as the 2 seed in the West this season. That was pre-Cat trade. I might move them down a little bit and move the Mavs up a little bit, but no doubt a great ranking for the Wolves. And coming in at number 3, this might be a little bit controversial to some. When I laid out the criteria for this video, I said the fit has to be, the main priority, and this team maybe has the best chemistry and fit than any team in the entire NBA, starting five-wise. I just think the 2 teams ahead of them are a little bit more versatile, and I'm gonna have the Denver Nuggets at number 3. I don't feel great about this, but I just do think it is the best ranking if I'm being objective, and it's kind of similar to the Wolves. If KCP were still here, certainly you can make a case for the number 2 spot. They downgrade a little bit with Christian Brown at the 2. The lineup will be for the Nuggets: Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. Obviously, this is one of the greatest starting fives in the league, and if I was making an entire league starting five ranking, I'd probably have them somewhere in the top 5. Like, no question. This is an elite starting five. I mean, the chemistry between the main 4 is unmatched. It is Boston Celtics-esque. They have the best player in the world at center. Defensively, I think they're fine. I don't think they're going to be great. I think losing KCP defensively is going to be big for them. Now, they do have a lot of size. They do have a lot of offensive firepower. They have versatility, switchability defensively, and Michael Porter Jr. just provides so much floor spacing for this team. He just is so dynamic as a shooter. Aaron Gordon is a do-it-all guy with a lot of playmaking upside offensively and athleticism, and he has been better at shooting threes. Now, Jamal Murray, coming off that big contract extension and that poor playoff performance, is going to have a lot to prove. You have maybe the best 2-man offensive duo in the entire league. I might say that they are Murray and Jokic, and at the end of the day, you have Jokic, who's just going to raise this team's floor to a top 3 seed in the West or top 4 seed in the West with his teammates healthy every single season. That's just how great he is. I just think at the end of the day, losing KCP bumps this team down a little bit, and that's not to say that number 3 means they have a big gap between 2 and 1, because I actually think the gap between the Nuggets and the number 2 team is a little bit smaller of a gap than, let's say, everyone below the Timberwolves to the Timberwolves. Like, I think the Lakers and Timberwolves is a big gap, and I think the Wolves and Nuggets is a bigger gap than the Nuggets and the number 2 team, but I just do have the Nuggets at number 3. As we know in the NBA, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, and while the Nuggets only get a little bit worse, a lot of other teams got a lot better, and so this is where I have them. I think that's fair. For the number 2 team, I have the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, talk about a explosive offensive 1 through 3. This lineup is going to be Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, and Derek Lively II. I expect Derek Lively II to take a big leap on the defensive end of the floor this season, and he is going to be a top-tier defender in this league at the center position. He is a great offensive rebounder as well. The spacing on this lineup is just, it's unmatched. I mean, it's going to be absolutely outrageous. You're going to have so many open shots in this lineup with the playmaking ability between Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You're not going to be able to double Luka or Kyrie, really at all with Klay Thompson on the floor, in my opinion, if Coach Kidd decides to put those guys in the proper positions. Now, PJ Washington could be the X factor of this lineup. I think he was a great fit in the Mavs lineup last season. I think he's a switchable defender. I think he's a pretty good defender. I think offensively, he is pretty versatile as well. He's just a great fit next to these guys. And I think defensively, you could say that their strategy might just be to funnel a lot of these, ball handlers, and honestly just funnel the offense in general into, Derek Lively II, because he's going to be a great rim protector. I'll be interested to see how this team performs defensively. I think perimeter defense could be an issue for this team, but at the end of the day, their offense is just going to be so good that I'm just not sure it's going to matter. I mean, it's really going to be so many open shots, and so Klay's addition to this offense, the spacing is just going to be outrageous. You're going to not be able to double Luka and Kyrie as much, and that is really the key, because at any given time, if you take, in years past, if you take Kyrie or Luka out of the game, the Mavs are basically playing on one leg offensively, but you're just really not going to be able to do that, anymore with Klay on the floor. And so, I do think on the bench, this team is pretty deep as well. We'll get into that in part 3, as I mentioned, but at the end of the day, this is the number 2, no question. If KCP was still in Denver and if Cat was still in Minnesota, this would be a very good conversation as to who's number 2. For me right now, it's just Dallas. It just is. And at the number 1 spot, maybe the most versatile and almost no weakness starting 5 that we have in the league, maybe other than the Boston Celtics. You could even say this team's starting 5 could be a little bit more versatile than Boston, at least to start the season without Boston having Kristaps Porzingis. We'll talk about them in the Eastern Conference video in part 2. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications turned on. But obviously at number 1, we're going to have the Oklahoma City Thunder with the starting lineup potentially looking a couple different ways. Now, a lot of people are saying the Thunder are going to start Alex Caruso. I personally think that is the best course of action. And some people are saying it's going to be Lou Dort and Caruso will come off the bench. Either way, I think the starting 5 of this team, whether it's Dort or whether it is Caruso, is the best in the West, no question. I would pick this lineup to be SGA, Alex Caruso, J-Dub, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren at the 4, and Hartenstein at the 5. There are even some rumors that Hartenstein will not start at the 5. I think that's crazy. He has to start at the 5. It's just, this lineup would be so much more dynamic with him at the 5, and so I have him there. But, no question, whether you start Dort at the 2 or whether you start Caruso at the 2, I think this lineup is the best in the West. They're just so versatile defensively. Offensively, the spacing is good, especially with Chet Holmgren. If he's going to play the 4, I mean, he's going to get so many catch and shoot opportunities. It's crazy. Defensively, for him to be able to roam around the defense as kind of a free safety, weak side shot blocking monster that he is, like, if he's just going to be able to play the 4, it's just going to make this team so much better defensively. They're going to be so great rebounding the basketball. SGA is going to have obviously another monster season. This team's going to generate easy offensive looks. You have multiple guys that can space the floor, that can get their own shot. J-Dub, I would predict to take a big leap this season in production offensively. He is the clear number 2 option for this team, and he's going to start to play like an elite number 2. Not that he hasn't been great before, but I expect him to be like an all-star this season, and so that's a little bit different. Chet is going to take a big jump as well. Last season he was a rookie, and so Hartenstein just adds so much versatility to this team just by his presence. With allowing Chet Holmgren to play the 4, this team is a different kind of team. It's a nightmare. The backcourt, the defense is just outrageous when you have Shea, when you're going to have either Caruso or Dort. I mean, this team's bench might be the number 1 bench. Like, there's just so much to like about this team. They're so stacked, so versatile, but they are clearly, no question, the number 1 starting 5 in the West, potentially starting 5 in the league. We'll have to see what, I say about the Boston starting 5 in the next video, but those are the rankings. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comment section if I got any starting 5s wrong, if there's any pieces of information I missed. Maybe there were some more confirmed lineups that I didn't know about. From what I understand, all the research I did, these are likely the starting 5s, but some of them have kind of different things that don't make sense for me. Either way, just let me know down in the comment section what you disagree with, what you agree with. Again, I'm totally cool with you guys, saying whatever you want to in the comments. If you're going to disagree, with my stuff, that's totally cool. We can talk about that in the comments. And my only recommendation is just if you're disrespectful, this is something I'm going to start doing a lot more. Name calling, blatant disrespect or hatred, this will be just removed from the comment section. All right. And so if you're going to disagree with me, that's totally cool. Again, I'm open for debate. I'm open to being wrong. I am wrong about a lot of stuff. I'm human. And so I can accept when I'm wrong. I can admit when I'm wrong. But if you're going to criticize the video or just anything in general, just stay on the topic. Here's what the difference between the 2 types of comments that I'm talking about. Hey, Dehave, here's the thing I disagree with, and here's why. Like, you have the Denver Nuggets ranked 3rd. I disagree with that, and here's why. And here, the other end of that, where, I just won't be tolerating this anymore, is you're a delusional clown, and the Nuggets being 3rd, you know nothing about basketball, and anyone who disagrees with me is also a delusional clown who doesn't know anything about basketball. You should just get off the internet. Like, that kind of stuff, it's not productive. It doesn't help anyone, and it just makes this channel a worse place. And so I will not be tolerating that stuff anymore. Hopefully guys, hopefully that's not too negative. If you enjoyed the video, please stick around on the channel, subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned, this is a 4-part series. This is the first video. Next video will be the Eastern Conference starting 5s, and then I'll do both benches, same order. So 3 will be the West bench and 4 will be the East bench. Please subscribe, leave a like on the video. If you want to see the series, all the way to the end, please subscribe and turn post notifications on. They will be out either daily or almost daily. So you can expect that next one either tomorrow or the next day, probably tomorrow. Daily uploads again coming back on the channel as the season ramps up. We're already in the preseason. Leave a like on the video, 15 likes. I think we can do it. Again, comment what you think of the list. As I gave that whole spiel about comments, please comment what you think, positive or negative. Just pay attention to what I said before. I don't want to ban people or, remove people from the comments, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Either way, I'm looking forward to making the East video next, and I will catch you guys in the next video tomorrow. Hopefully you guys did enjoy it, and hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day today. Hopefully you guys are as excited as I am for the regular season, and I will catch you guys on the next one. This is your boy D-Haven, as always. Peace.